So, I'm a big fan of all the topsy-turvy, strange-o, wango, like that one Adamafa Fiare, the crazy Pakistani director who always gives you a zing and a zag before he gives you the culmination. It's always a trick. And you're like, oh, God bless you, got me. So that's the kind of thing where you're hoping that happens for the Super Bowl. And when you're an NFList, an NFLite, you speak NFLese or whatever. It doesn't even matter. It doesn't. You love football. You love college football. You love high school football. You love football. You love everything about football. You like collecting cards of football players. That's pretty hilarious. But in this particular movie, Johnny, he was, whatever you say, he was big into football. In this particular instance, Johnny was playing the part of a has-been quarterback, and they shaved his head bald, and they made him appear more white, and they told him you got to pack on 25 pounds. And his thing was to run down all the black quarterbacks, basically. And we didn't know where this movie was going. You're gonna run down, and he would in the movie, Johnny Depp is watching film like of offensive plays, because Johnny's his role is to study film and then go on ESPN or whatever and talk about it in the movie as an old has-been white, paunchy, bald white quarterback. But in the movie, his task is always to run down the black quarterbacks and say they're a bunch of runners. They can't throw or huck. They don't know what they're doing. They can't zip. They don't know they don't know how to huck a seed. So, the thing is, Johnny's not a bad guy, but he's not racist, but he works for all the racists. He gets his check cut from the racists. And they're trying to, Johnny supports their racist thing in this instance, but all the other instances in the movie, Johnny doesn't put up with the racist bullcrap. Like in one scene, something happens and somebody starts talking about chitlins. And Johnny, he takes up like the ladle of chitlins, scalding hot, and he puts it in his mouth, and he mouths it down. He's like, I love chitlins. And he burned his tongue and everything in the movie. It was really horrible. No one even knew why he did it that way. But the whole thing is, Johnny, he's torn because in the movie he doesn't really want to be the face of racism and try to run down all the black quarterbacks. He goes in the past, like Dog Remembrance almost, but different because it's more shallow. He remembers, he always highlights the guy who got all the concussions for San Fran, the guy who inherited the job that Joe Montana left, the team that George Sheifert inherited from Bill Walsh. And he always says this one, Steve Young could run until he got the concussions. Yeah, Steve was brilliant. Steve was a gazelle. He was no Michael Vick. He was no Lamar Jackson. Whatever you say. Lamar Odom? I don't think it was. Lamar Jackson. Donovan McNabb had some hustle in his wrestle. You know what? When Dak was good, he had some, get up and go. You know what I'm saying? All the great ones did it. Tom Brady and Peyton Manning on their stilts that they played on, their giant stilts tethered to two big cinder blocks, they could always pick up some first downs. Joe Burrow's like a magician. So running game, blah, blah, blah. The thing is, in this movie, Johnny was tasked to try to downplay the athleticism or the whatever you say, the freedom or the grace or the joy of the black style, where they just run a lot, throw a lot. Kill them with the run and throw off the run. It's easy. It's hard to throw, so you make it easy by running a lot. It's beautiful. Steve Young, Fran Tarkenton. We go back to not Y.A. Kittle. These other ones, Joe Jacobson. Listen, the blacks are mad in some sense because the Jews knew how to do it. Sonny Jurgensen, all these Jews knew how to do it first. They were, back in those days, you had to get like 15 yards a game and you were like a hero. Nowadays, you got to get 100 something running. But back then, you could get like 17 yards. You're like, oh my God, Sonny Jurgensen, you Jewish bastard, get over here. How did you do that? How do you beat them? I think he played for the Eagles. Who knows? Eagles are always free form at the quarterback position. Randall Cunningham was the greatest single awesome quarterback who ever existed for the first 3 or 4 years of his career. Hey, it's 3rd and 18. Put Randall in. He's making it 80% of the time. Randall's converting 80% on 3rd and 18. Randall Cunningham, remember the name. They didn't. Oh, they won't enshrine it, but that was, remember that, Buddy Ryan. He's going to punt on 3rd down or give it to Randall. And who's going to punt? Randall. Be careful. But in this movie, Johnny, this is the punchline. This is the whole thing. It culminates. Johnny, because this is really bad too, Because you like the whole movie, you're like, what the fuck, I don't care about this one, that one, the other one, this woman. Somebody has a woman, somebody don't have a woman, somebody might be a homo, somebody might be something else. Somebody's like a fruitcake who can't do nothing but draw pictures of Latter-day Saints at chorus. Nobody cares. Nobody's worrying about it. But it all winds down to the finally, oh my God, I could stop drinking now. Johnny's finally going to tell us what's going on in this damn movie about black quarterbacks versus running quarterbacks. And they built it up big, too. It was a crescendo. Like ESPN was talking bullshit about, all the black things. It was like culminated in, in February's Black History Month anyways. And so, they're like, guess what? The Super Bowl coming up. It wasn't Donovan McNabb. It was the guy who was with Nick Saban in Alabama, and then he went over to Oklahoma, and he won the Heisman in Oklahoma. Then, who's that owner that drafted that guy? And then stuck by him and insisted. He looks like a genius. He might be the next Jerry Jones. Once Jerry Jones is fossilized, I pray this isn't the truth because I love the Giants. Philly might be set up with their ownership of all things. The battery-throwing Philadelphians, the Santa Claus, harassing Philadelphians, whatever. But in the movie, they were building up really big, and ESPN and ABC and all these other things were saying, this is the first Super Bowl where 2 black quarterbacks will start. And in the movie, Johnny Depp, he says, hey, yeah. From the background at first, he goes, but so you hardly heard it at first. You're like, he says in the background, because ESPN was building up the whole thing with the guy from KC and the guy from Philly. The one guy's name from Philly I thought was Justin Trudeau. The other guy's name was Pat Sajak, but then I found out it was Pat Mahoney. Pat Mahoney. Must have had some Irish blood in him. Pat Mahoney? It doesn't matter. KC versus Philly, they're QBs. ESPN, ABC, a lot of things. Disney were all saying, it's the first time 2 black individuals who square up from the quarterback position, both being African American. Both 2 black quarterbacks. First time 2 black, and then from the distance you heard, yeah, but who's the blackest? And nobody knew what to say. The thunderstrucking that went through the executives and the producers, and they dropped from the pelvic down. Their small, their backs gave out on them. Their scrotums collapsed, and they collapsed down like the World Trade Center. Somebody stepped up a little closer and says, yeah, but what about, who's the blackest? Nobody knew what the fuck to say. They were like, oh my God, this guy's a moron. What are you talking about? Who's the blackest? He's like, what's the difference? You got to highlight so much black. They're the 2 first black guys. So who is the blackest? Maybe he has more power. It's so wonderful they're black. Maybe the one who's blacker will probably win. Maybe Vegas should know this. Maybe if it's so great and wonderful that 2 black guys have finally met up in the Super Bowl. And, as a dog, I'm like, it is pretty good. I mean, come on. 2 homos, Indian, one lesbian, this one, when 2 women finally meet up, when 2 black women, when 2 Indian women. I mean, if this thing goes on, if God Almighty doesn't end it, it's going to be, in the future, it's going to be, who's the cyborg? Who has the most AI in their brain making them be the quarterback? The first metaphilological, quarterback, everything quarterback. But today, it's the first 2 black guys. And it wasn't a man. It was Johnny Depp. In the movie, he harps. It was like, you could tell Johnny was like, yeah, gosh, I don't know if I should do this. He's like, but yeah. And then they stepped up. He stepped up to the camera. He says, yeah, so important that there's 2 black quarterbacks starting this Super Bowl for the first time ever. So I just thought maybe it would be also important if somebody could tell me who is the blackest. And then finally, they cast this beautiful, stunning woman. No one could tell what race she is. She's a little bit like a muddish. She's like a mud race. So light-skinned, but yet so creamy and voluptuously dark. It's like one of them chocolate-covered vanilla creams or something. You're like, oh my goodness gracious, it's just the perfect amount of black, and then you crunch it up and all these other things. It doesn't matter. But in the movie, they hustled Johnny away and they threw him in a van. And in this van that was all blacked out and it scorched away, and you could tell it was like a combustible engine van. It had a lot of puffs of bad smoke, bad blue smoke. And you knew that was the way they were saying that this bastard's been put down. If you want to question this bullshit, if you want to be a big, you want to say who's the blackest, maybe we're going to throw you in the back of the van, we're going to drive you off in the wilderness and you'll never be heard of again. And in the movie, Johnny, that's what it was. And they had combustion, horrible, they could have put Greta Thunberg in there and say, hey, what's going on with all this blue smoke coming out of this van? But it was like a rape van or a terrorist van. They threw him in the back and he was never heard of again because he said what he said. We don't need to repeat it because we're not, it's like we're not going to get in that, we're not stepping in that beehive. So it doesn't matter. But it did at some point, but then it didn't, and then it didn't again. It's okay.